Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And this show that I have here, What's My Good Cheer? That's what it is. In this movement that we make, we can find that we would prefer that some of that uncomfortableness of that movement didn't um, didn't exist in all truth, or at the very least, be a little bit more manageable for us. Maybe not so much of a surprise when it hits us. And we know those ones that bring on the grief, right? That little bit of heartbreak. But those are opportunities. Hello, Kathy, dear. Those are opportunities because we're in that feeling anyway. We're in that pain and in that struggle anyway. Those are the opportunities that I take, and you can look at it as an opportunity because I look at it as an opportunity. It's painful anyway, so why not make the very best of it as you possibly can? Maybe we have that opportunity to make it even better than the way it was, right? Sometimes we get that opportunity if we're paying attention, if we can absorb a conversation or experience a lesson, we get that opportunity. And that's respecting and honoring that idea that, this information, right, is out there. And because of our upbringings, right, dynamic or not, we miss or receive, right, this information as it comes across our paths, or we don't, right? And it's in that patterning sometimes. And I know this from my own experience that I've had to have a lot of lessons pounded into me only because I would receive the lessons, but I would perceive the lessons. You know what I mean? That we talk about perspectives, right? Sometimes we read into things differently than what they are. And I've done that many, many times in my life. And I've stepped in that doo doo where I've so deep into it, so convinced it's become so much a part of my reality. And it's not even true, right? It's not really true, but it's kind of like that Stockholm syndrome, you know what I mean? Where you get kidnapped and you're with your captors for so long that it gets to the point that in your fear, your desperation, or just wanting to feel that you truly exist, that you take on characteristics of your captors, right? Of those things that are uncomfortable, right? And sometimes you make realizations of what you did, that big piece of doo doo that you stepped into, right? And I'm not afraid to say, right? I stepped into some pretty big stuff that held me back in my evolution. I should have been here a whole lot sooner than what I was, right? But because I'm only human, right? And you could say, what, just where you are? Well, there are people further ahead in this journey than I am, but because of my idea of doing it in baby steps, in riding those waves, enjoying the views, having the experience, whether it's an ouchie, right, or a yay, right? It's in the experience that I can find that idea that everything is going to be okay, right? Right? If it's bad, eventually it's going to have to end, right? And if it's fantastic, eventually that's going to end too, if you're doing this properly. So consistently, right? Change. And we're going to go back into this word change that we did a couple of weeks ago, change and choice. It's going to be consistent in the topic that I bring to the table because this is the world that we're living in right now. And you might suspect that we're just moving into this, but we have been in this for a very long time. But it's only now that we're recognizing it, right? That we're coming to even recognize that there are people with ideas like this, right? I'm not the only one. That in this digital age, right, we are finding each other, that we're better understanding what's going on and having a little bit of that heads up. It's going to take a little bit of that ouchie away, a little bit of that heartbreak, and a little bit of that pain, but more importantly, that little bit of understanding that we so desperately look for, right? In a world that we understand very little of, right? And without these conversations and without these experiences, right? And without the lessons. And so this is where that respect and the topic of respect and honor comes in. It is the ones who come before us, right? It is the ones who came before us and made all those mistakes, who took on all those ouchies, who sacrificed themselves, right, for something a little bit better for the whole, right? Those are my light and my darknesses. Those are my preciouses. Those are the sweetness. Those are the ones that have given so much and yet struggle so much, right? Because they're trying to get the job done, but they're getting the job done at their own expense. So when we talk about respect and honor, right? That respect for ourselves that we're not always giving to ourselves, right? But at the same time, honoring those who are plowing through anyway, right? That they're getting the job done anyway, that are being the experience, right? And the example for others, right? Whether it's not what to do, right? Don't step in that doo doo that Cindy stepped in, right? Or, oh my goodness, look at how Cindy got that done. And it didn't even hurt. She didn't even cry. She didn't give up, right? She's still smiling. She's saying next, right? She's saying one more time. And in truth, it's never one more time because it's always one more time after that. That's the patterning, right? That allows us to make those mistakes. And you cry where and complain and you're resentful and jealous when you see people, right? Where you would like to be, where you're striving to be, where you can, in your own ideas, right? Of looking at your potential and saying, well, if I stick with this, I can do that. I can be there, right? We see our potentials, but it's only in our choices that change will come into our lives because in those choices are the movement. And the choices for me were in taking those lessons, grateful for the digital age. As a baby boomer, it very well could have missed me, or I could have missed that train, right? Very grateful for that digital age, but I'm very grateful and I have much respect for that part of myself that somehow came across my path. And in that repetitiveness of the ouchies and the heartbreaks and the grief, the struggle, that eventually some of these lessons sunk in, right? And then in paying respect and honor to who and what and where I got those lessons. And a lot of times, a lot of these people actually, I'm going to have to say, some of the lessons that I've gotten came from people who might not have even realized their own dreams, right? I have some mentors who are no longer here. I have some good influence that have not been around me for a very long time. I'm going to talk to my grandmother, right? My father, even my mother being, right? We got to understand, we have to bring the forgiveness into this and understand that not everybody is at the same state, right? And we have to understand that those who come before us are going to be in a state, right? And yet, when they're down, what do? We point at them, we kick them when they're at their lowest, we take advantage of their kindnesses, we take credit for their work. Oh, right? I've seen that 100%. Me, myself, but in this, we're going to give some good cheer out. False alarm. I live behind a fire station. Let's hope that it is a false alarm. I'm using today my cup, right? Be kind. Be kind. We have to be kind in this process. I didn't realize that we were going to be jumping in this deep, this fast, this soon, right? But the idea is to get much of the heavy work done as we possibly can so that some of the other work, which is just as heavy or just not as heavy, won't feel heavy. It won't be heavy. It might be even, well, like for me, right? Something that my curiosity munched on that helped me to pull away from some of those actions and some of those ideas that I had that didn't serve me, right? So that I could become passionate about something that's good for me rather than becoming passionate for something that's not going to serve me very well, like that pink ice donuts with the sprinkles. And for you, it's going to be something else. But you get the idea, and that's what we're working. This is what we're working on now in the creation of the best human being as we possibly can, to understand that none of us are perfect. None of us. Not even close, right? But some of us are further ahead than others, right? They're the ones who came before us, right? Maybe I could consider myself one of those. And if you're following my content, maybe you could consider yourself one of those, right? But unless we're connecting with each other and following each other's stories and paying attention, right? Paying attention and in the repetitiveness of the lessons that we get and being able to sit in it, right? We don't want to sit in it. That's the thing. That's what my help is for. Because we're empathic, because we're highly sensitive, because a lot of these moves that we're trying to make, some of those goals that we're trying to make, requires us to have those prerequisites, those parts that are saying, follow me, right? Follow me. How can you follow without those prerequisites? You could only hear it then. You can only aspire to it then, right? You can only dream. You can only hope. Hope, 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 hope. You hang out with me, you know I'm going to make fun of that word, hope, right? Because it is an idea that we're just sitting there waiting for someone to discover, right? What we're supposed to be doing next, or what the solution is to that disease that's taken over the world, right? Or how we can better move forward. There's so many questions out there that are unanswered. There are so many experiences out there ready, willing, and waiting for a little bit of attention, a little bit of help. a little bit of kindness, right? And when I talk about we're no good to anybody else until we take care of ourselves, we have to respect that process, right? Honor the teachers by spending the time in the lessons, and don't let those compulsions, right? And those limiting beliefs keep us from what we're supposed to be doing, right? And as highly sensitives and as empaths, I can't stress enough how important it is for us not to give up. And the only way that we can't give up is to do those baby steps. And yes, we liked things yesterday, right? But better late than never. I didn't wake up to any of these ideas until well into my 50s. I'm 61 now. I'm going to be 62 in another couple of months, right? And that's okay. That's okay because I got those detrimental to my movement forward answers now. I'll be able to stand better on myself without being able to, or having, having to trauma bond with people who will just keep me in place rather than letting me discover who I was meant to be, where I was supposed to be, what I'm supposed to experience, what I was supposed to bring to the table. And even if I'm late coming to the table, I don't think I would have been brought to the table if it was too late. You know what I mean? So something's coming. What it is, I don't know. But because I'm doing it in baby steps, that's okay with me, right? In this moment, everything is okay. And I think because I make good choices, best choices I can possibly make in this moment in my evolution, without beating myself up for the lessons that I don't have, for the understandings that I don't have, and not being understood for some of those understandings that I do have, right? You got those understandings. You resonate with those understandings. It's important enough that I'm speaking about it now. So we're not going to let go of it now. We're going to hold on to it. There's a time and a place for goodbyes. There truly is. There's time and a place to let things go. And I tell you, I thought I was done with lessons a couple of years ago, even. And some of those most important lessons, maybe a couple of weeks ago, right? Some of those lessons that offered up solution to some heartbreak, to some how is it possible, right? To how do I do this without having my boundaries crossed, right? Without disrespecting myself. How can I do this without disrespecting myself or allowing anybody else to disrespect me? And to be able to have those answers now. Whereas where I thought I might have been ready a couple of years ago, I wasn't even close. And if I'd had that information, I'd be like, what? And I'd be on to the next thing because it wouldn't have made any sense to me. It wouldn't have been believable. It would have felt like, it would have felt untrue. It would have felt like something that I would have looked at and said, no, that's not realistic. And I would have searched out another lesson that in the moment, right, was a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more acceptable, a little bit less painful, right, to live with. And I would much rather have the truth than live a lie. I've lived a lie for the most part of my life, and that's the truth. And that's the painful thing about it, is because that was my greatest pain, is to live with that untruth and then to finally realize that, oh my goodness, that's doo-doo that I stepped into. And even though that there was, right, situations, stories, characters, conversations coming across my path, because I hadn't taken the prerequisite of the lesson before, I wasn't able to absorb the lesson. And sometimes, I absorb lessons. Even if I don't get them, I'll pay attention to them. I'll give them some thought. And I don't really just toss them off to the side and say, ooh, that's hoopla. That's a bunch of silly stuff. No, I don't do that because I know what we think about is realized. And even though I didn't think about that, somebody thought of that. Somebody thought of that so much that it became a network, it became an organization, it became a congregation. You know what I mean? So what is thought about is realized, and then so what happens is it becomes a truth, and we're butting heads up against the truth. And this is one of my ideas and one of my mission statements that it takes all kinds to make the world, and we're going to eventually have to get along with each other, right? But until we understand how to get along with each other, right? We're still going to be fighting with our own limiting beliefs, right? It took a while for to accept same sex, but we're doing it, aren't we? Where there was a time when women didn't have a say, and yet, right? We're in that marketplace now. We are competing as individuals and not by gender, right? That we're finding ways to make things that one way at one time was not acceptable, right? But now is very acceptable. In the 70s, and I tell this one because it's a good analogy in the 70s, because that idea of prejudice was still fairly high, right? It was starting to dissipate a little bit, but as a child, I was able to have my own friends. I could choose my own friends. It was something maybe my parents agreed on, or something that we were going to be allowed to make, for our most part, our own decisions and make our own mistakes, right? Step in our own doo-doo. And we would learn by that. And I did pick my friends, and for the most part, most of my friends made bad choices, right? Maybe I think they're bad choices, but maybe they weren't. For them, they might have been amazing choices. But for the most part, my girlfriends all had babies by the time they were 15, 14, 15 years old, right? I was only looking to be welcomed, right? I was just looking for people to like me. And because there weren't a lot of options, I took up the options that were offered up to me. And I tell you, right, these girls may or may not have made mistakes in their choices, but they sure treated me well, right? They were so kind. They were so welcoming to me when I was having so many problems at home, to know that there was somebody who thought I was okay, that I had some value as a friend, right? And I cultured that over my lifetime, right? I did. I honored myself that way by knowing and recognizing that it would get me places, right? People would want to be around me if I was a little bit more kinder, a little bit more accommodating, a little bit more useful. That was a big one, right? And other things, but today is not the day to talk about those things, right? But the idea in respecting ourselves by doing those baby steps, right? Not just seeing the prize at the end, just digging and going for the prize and plowing through everything just to get that diploma. You got that piece of paper, but did you learn anything in that process, right? Did you learn anything in that process? And my hopes is just to make that process, right, my story that I'm playing out, that I'm living out, that I'm curious about, that I'm having fun with, that I'm creating, right, myself, that has so that it has the least amount of hiccups as I possibly can. And I think I've avoided that. I think I've made some movement with my life, some great movement with my life. And I've made some movement with my brand also, right? And that was because of the choices that I made. So when you see me keep bringing back choices and change into conversation, right? That's that movement, right? And that's that indication that things are getting done. Sometimes we don't see what we've accomplished in the work that we do, even an hour ago, or yesterday, or last week, right? Lots of times we start over. We should start over. It's called pivoting, right? And that was my first live on this YouTube channel, was the topic of pivot, right? I went to 11 different elementary schools, and yeah, okay, I got some issues as an adult from going 11 different elementary schools, but going to 11 elementary schools offered up opportunities to try a little something different each time I went into a school, right? The kids didn't like me in this school, coming in mid-year, got picked up. Maybe there's something I can do, right? And it's always that adapting, that little bit of chameleon, and we don't blame ourselves, right? Sometimes, as a tree that grows in the extreme, in the environment, in the weather, that we have to learn in our adaptability to grow a certain way. The idea is that we're still growing, we're still going to bear that fruit, right? But sometimes we do have to crawl along the ground in order to avoid the wind, right? Sometimes we do have to go a little bit crooked so we can fill up the space so that there's a little bit of shade along the bottom of the tree, right? We do this, right, for our own survival, and that's a good thing, because I truly believe that we are in a state where we are moving in our evolution. And just the fact that, right, making these choices and bringing about change into our lives, and me and showing up here and showing the process, right? Because it's my process. And this is what I'm doing in order to accomplish some of those dreams, some of those ambitions, to what's the word I'm looking to rectify some of those missed lessons that I have, that I'm doing some double duty, and grateful at the same time, because I'm doing double duty, because I'm allowing my curiosity and my hunger to know why, right? I chose this, right? To understand. And I understand also what that means, right? Because it's been explained to me and shown to me. And in the lesson, it's come across my path, in the experience, it's come across my path many, many times, right? But it's only in my choices as to never give up, to find a way, to adapt and conquer, to pivot, to change, but more importantly, to respect myself in that process, because there are people out there who are not even trying, who are not even trying, right? And so, if nothing else, I'm going to give myself that, right? I'm going to give myself that. But to give to others, I'm going to close it off here, that honor, which is the recognition of the lessons and the teachers, right? The characters, the experience, the heartbreak, the love, the pain, the fun, the joy, right? The optimism, right? That in the repetitiveness of taking the lessons, that it is in my hopes that I can make some movement that will show by example that it can be done. And then, right, somebody else will pick up that baton, right, and run with it themselves. Okay, you guys, be kind to yourself today. Be kind to yourself today, right? I guess for the next couple of weeks, it's going to be, right. I'm not going to say a couple of weeks, because it's my hopes that that was the last conversation. I guess so. That's not the thing we do. We go deep here, right? We go to the root of the problem, and not just go to the root of the problem, because it's not enough for you to just know what went wrong. It wasn't enough for me to know what happened. It was heartbreaking to know what happened, right? But there's some forgiveness there, and there's some opportunity there, and there's some lessons there. And I can only be that evidence for myself, right? You have to be your own evidence because you're going somewhere else. Where that is, I don't know, right? But we're traveling down this road for a little while together, right? And if we're lucky, right, we'll meet each other at the end. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. And we'll see each other tomorrow. Bye bye.